Hello and welcome. The biggest buzz at Davos at the World Economic Forum and in conversations across the world is about the transformative possibilities held by artificial intelligence, brought alive most recently and most starkly by ChatGPT. To understand how this could potentially impact governance architecture in India and elsewhere, we're joined at the India Pavilion at the World Economic Forum in Davos by a very heavyweight panel of really sharp technocratic experts. Allow me to introduce first India's Minister for IT, Telecom, Railways, Ashwini Vaishnaw. Welcome, sir. Flanking him, we have the President of Microsoft, Brad Smith. Thank you so much for your time. And one of India's sharpest CEOs, winner of the Business Today Best CEO Award, Rajesh Gopinathan from TCS. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start by asking you, Minister, in the conversations you've had at the World Economic Forum, how do you assess the prospects of artificial intelligence helping move digital infrastructure and digital governance into the next gear?
Thank you, Rahul. India has adopted digital technologies like fish takes water. Each and every aspect of our economy is today digitalizing at a very rapid pace. We believe that India's stack, which has made such a fundamental difference in people's lives, empowering them, giving them the new tools, giving them new technological, new access, that will be further strengthened by AI. And one of the quickest wins is we integrated our Bhashini language AI tool, which translates from one Indian language to any other Indian language, real time, spoken, text, everything. We integrated that with ChatGPT, and very good results we are seeing. Somebody in hinterland of India speaking can ask a question in Hindi to ChatGPT. ChatGPT finds the answer and actually gives the answer back in spoken Hindi. So that kind of possibility is there. Yes, there will be many more serious applications like in cybersecurity, in healthcare, in multiple sectors. Probably as AI grows, this is the time to be curious, time to make sure that we are open-minded, time to make sure that we are reflective upon what AI can do for the society.
Mr. Smith, artificial intelligence is most often been something held out in a distant future. A lot of what Microsoft has been saying and doing recently, especially through ChatGPT, seems to suggest that that future is here, it's now. Can you give us a sense of what you think are the most obvious and the most powerful applications of artificial intelligence in the manner in which countries are governed?
Well, the first thing I would say is I think you're right. The truth is we really started to recognize last year as we worked with OpenAI, and it really is this relationship that we've been building for several years, that we would see in 2023 advances that 2 years ago we would have said we wouldn't see until 2033. So it's as if the future has been pulled forward by a decade. And I think the first thing we should recognize is that people will develop creative uses for this that none of us have yet imagined. That's the first thing we learn every time technology moves forward in this way. I will say this, I think this is an enormous tool for what I would call critical thinking and creative expression. Take the example you just heard. Someone has a question, they can go get an answer to it, even if the answer right now is in a language they do not speak. That opens up the opportunity for people to just think and learn more about the world. The other thing that, of course, everyone is experiencing when they use ChatGPT is it's this enormous tool for expression, for creative expression. Now just step back and say, is there anything in human life, in any country, that doesn't involve some level of critical thinking or creative expression? The answer is no. So now we recognize this will permeate almost everything.
Rajesh, when you look at tools like ChatGPT and more largely the use of artificial intelligence, where do you see a company like TCS be able to use it, not just in your own operations, and because you're a partner to the Government of India in so many applications and being part of the Indian digital stack, how do you see this help accelerate the speed of digital transformation?
Rahul, as the Minister said, what we have seen is that the moment a new digital technology is made available, its rate of adoption, both in society as well as in industry, has always surprised us. The extent of technology leverage has been continuously increasing, but we still believe that we are at the very early stages of truly using technology to transform many of the value chains in multiple industries and in other social areas. So any such tool that actually accelerates that technology adoption process, I think is a huge benefit, net benefit to society, and we need to understand it. We need to be able to incorporate it into our service delivery. But I'm very optimistic and positive about what it can do in terms of its transformative power.
Brad, you spoke initially of the positive impact of artificial intelligence and its role in society and governance. How worried are you about the negative impact? I was reading about a tool which Microsoft itself is developing, which can, within 3 seconds, start replicating somebody else's voice. Now, in an Indian context and globally, there's so much fake news already. Now, imagine Minister Vaishnav's voice saying he's just become best friends with his prime opponent, and all kinds of things can happen before he comes out and clarifies. That story's already gone viral, where education is low, people's desire or the chances of them believing in fake news becomes that much higher. Some of these technologies could have a very deep, dark side.
Well, and I think that is also an important point. We need to go into this with our eyes wide open. It's probably good that it's 2023, and we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years that fundamentally every technology tool can also be turned into a weapon. Yeah, and there's a reason that our research division did that research project, announced the results of it, and did not release the tool so that other people could misuse it. So in the first instance, I think all of us who are in the business of creating these technology tools need to build on the work that we've been pursuing for 5 or more years to ensure that they're used ethically, responsibly, legally. And then I think the other thing we need to recognize is that this technology likely will be weaponized by some. Every technology always is. But we can then use the technology itself to defend against those kinds of abuses. One scenario that is being discussed in a number of countries right now is frankly a concern by teachers that students will use this to cheat on their papers. Well, there's a student, a former Microsoft intern who's now a senior at Princeton University in the United States, who used ChatGPT to create an application to detect when papers are being written by ChatGPT. But that is actually a lesson that comes from cybersecurity as well. You use the technology to increase defensive protection, and that will be very much
But
a
high
part of
schools in
this.
New York have already banned ChatGPT. Some of them concerned about the prospects of this being used in homework, and especially in a society like India where rote learning is a key part of education. Unfortunately, you can be picking out answers very, very, very easily through such tools.
And the one thing I would say, and I'll take the phrase we were talking about before, look, we should all be curious, not judgmental. We should not minimize any problem because we will need to experience how serious it is. And at the same time, I would say we should not give up on our ability to solve it. I'm reminded of a quote from a teacher who said, "This technology is a crutch." And the problem with the crutch is that people can keep using it more and more and more, and they lose the muscles they need to walk. Now, this was a very successful teacher of the year where she lived. But she said this in 1984, and she said it about the calculator and what it would do for students' skills in math. So let's all use the opportunity to learn together before we come to
But
judgment.
Minister, when it comes to weaponization of technology, often lawbreakers are one step ahead of law enforcers. And the prospects of hackers, dark states, deep states using ChatGPT and similar artificial intelligence technologies against national interests is very high. How concerned are you about this?
See, whenever new technology comes, whether you go 100 years back and when the transition happened from horses to cars, or when you go transition happened from the old type of transistors to digital, Transitions happened when internet came. Transitions happened when the example that Brad gave about calculators. Whenever such technological transitions happen, there would be disruptions, there would be uncertainties. We in the government should be very reflective. We should be very open-minded. We have to make sure that the innovation economy which India has built up so assiduously, we have 100 plus unicorns, that innovation economy sits comfortable, that keeps on moving forward, while all the societal harms that we see are properly regulated. We will have to be very thoughtful in this. We cannot have a very generalistic kind of statement or generalistic kind of regulation. We'll have to build up the regulation step by step based on the experience. That's the way we should go. Then we are able to harness the technology to our benefit while protecting the society from its harms.
Where does this leave search? More specifically, Google search. And is this really Microsoft's Brahmastra? Brahmastra is this weapon from Indian myth and history to try and kill Google?
Look, I don't know enough about Indian myth and history to opine on that. I mean, nor am I here to offer a prediction about the future of Google.
Ask ChatGPT.
I would be very curious. Let me just say, I think that we are going to find that this technology is transformative for what it can do for people who want to learn about what's happening in the world. Stay tuned, more is coming.
Mm-hmm. Are you concerned about the prospects of what this could do for education, especially in an Indian context? By the time you build a supporting ecosystem to try and ensure that those tools which you spoke about used by Princeton professors are available in India, a lot of students could be using this en masse.
I think the tools will get propagated very rapidly. I don't think that the way Indian population adapts technology, I think that's phenomenal. I don't think we will be lagging behind. Yes, there will be impacts where we still don't know what the impact will be. The impact has to be properly seen, experienced, studied, and we keep taking actions. It will be a very, very fluid situation. As Brad said, we have to be curious. We should not be judgmental. We should be open to technology. Our country has shown that being open to technology can be really, really transformative. So we should be open to technology. We should keep learning as we walk.
While the period of the pandemic saw a massive tech boom, now there's a lot of talk of a tech winter. And I want to ask Brad Smith first about, because Microsoft announced 10,000 jobs being retrenched just yesterday. How do you see the prospects of the tech winter, and how does this impact your outlook towards a market in a country like India?
Well, I don't know that I would use the phrase tech winter, even if this is the first time I've ever been with people in India looking at snow out the window, as we are here in Davos today. I do think that across the technology sector, at least on the west coast of the United States and a bit more broadly, the industry hired more people than it has found the growth in the last year to continue to support. So, we joined the ranks of others, and yesterday said we were going to be reducing our employee count by about 5%. Now, even after that, even after we're done, we'll have more employees working at Microsoft, in July of 2023 than we had in July of 2022. So, that's more like spring or fall than winter. We'll have to get in balance. One of the things that Satya Nadella said yesterday when he sent an email to all of our employees is really we've got to think about two things simultaneously. In the short run, because you always have to manage through the short run, we need to align our resources with the revenue opportunity. But it goes back to the bigger topic we're having here right now or across Davos. This is an important moment in the history of technology, especially for a company like Microsoft, for the role we are playing as a first mover on artificial intelligence. And so part of what we're doing is ensuring that we're putting our resources in the right places.
Does this hold the prospect, Mr. Gopinathan, in the longer term of the need for lesser techies as well? It's been spoken of for a long time. There have been multiple reports about freshers getting job offers, not from any one particular company, I'm talking about the industry in general, and then not being onboarded, or that being the onboarding process being delayed for several months. How concerned are you that with tools like ChatGPT being able to solve for most problems, that impacts employment as we know it at this moment?
Oh, not at all. If you even look at the United States, which is far ahead in the technology curve, by various estimates, the total technology talent required by the industry versus availability, there's a gap of something like 3 million. So we are in a hugely supply constrained situation, and this is to execute the projects that are currently envisioned. As I said, the extent of technology leverage in value chains is still at a very early stage, and industry after industry is getting disrupted with the extent of technology.
That also
uptake.
requires coding skills and technical skills of a very high order. What do you think ministers like Minister Vaishnaw and the government should be doing to try and equip young professionals with those kind of cutting-edge skills which companies like Microsoft or TCS would require?
The history of Indian IT, supported so strongly by the government, is actually a testament to the fact that we continuously keep on upgrading to whatever is the new technology challenge that comes about. And we have always demonstrated that ability to constantly learn. And one thing that, if anything, and Satya Nadella keeps talking about it, the one thing that differentiates humans and what's critical that we need to nurture is our ability to continuously learn. If you believe that, the old style, that you learn once and then you will apply it for the rest of your life, that world is gone far beyond.
Yeah, if I could jump in on this, speaking as an American who has a leadership role at a global technology company, India has the most valuable natural resource in the world for the next 3 decades. It's this extraordinary number of talented engineers and data scientists. And AI is a tool that will make everyone more successful, frankly, will reduce the less probably rewarding aspects of creating software, will create an opportunity and need for everybody to grow their skills and get better. But look, what I see, what Saudi Arabia is to oil, India is to engineering. And the world of the 21st century is being built with this natural resource. And the fact that so many young Indians are going to university, are getting engineering degrees, are learning data science, keep going. The world needs you, and this is one of the most important economic engines, frankly, in the history of economics.
But a lot of that data science is being taught in universities in the US and elsewhere. You've yourself been the beneficiary of a high-level education. Given the state of India's higher education, for the large part, many would say a country like China has done much more in developing global world-class educational institutions than India has. A lot of the likes of Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Arvind Krishna have made their names outside India.
I wouldn't accept that point. Indian education system is so well appreciated all over the world. The universities, some of the institutes that we have, the IIT system, many of the other institutions are really, really world-class. Research is at cutting edge. Collaboration with global educational institutions is real-time. Each and every aspect of education we are constantly collaborating, and education is not zero-sum game. It is always a win-win when you collaborate with MIT. IIT Kanpur has a collaboration with MIT. MIT wins, IIT wins. Both win. So that is the kind of approach we have followed. And the new education policy of Prime Minister Modi ji, that actually reinforces that direction and gives much more flexibility to the education system. For example, 5G. We are setting up 5G labs in close to, by now, about 60 universities. So all these students are now getting an opportunity to see what 5G is, experience it, see what different use cases can be built. When they come out of the university, they are ready for the new technological leap. Semiconductor, 85 universities we have already set up the semiconductor labs. AICT has already curated a new course. So it's a very, very dynamic situation, and we are very glad that the new education policy gives us that flexibility.
And if I could just add to that, there's 2 things that I think are really interesting and important for people to think about. The first is the future of engineering and data science. A great engineer or data scientist in the future is going to be someone who has also studied and learned something from the social sciences, from the humanities. And the second is especially the role that India plays as really the software and engineering powerhouse for the world. It's really good to have people who've spent some time in the rest of the world. And by the way, there's going to be more jobs in the tech sector for people who come out of the social sciences. To serve people with artificial intelligence, we need to bring people together in a multidisciplinary international way so we all understand the people we're working to serve. All of these things, it's an extraordinary asset for India. And by the way, you're going to see more people in the future who may have grown up in the United States. They're going to be going and getting a graduate degree in India as well. That's the world of the future.
As the fault lines between China and the United States intensify, more and more countries are putting up tech trade barriers. The United States encouraging very strongly for semiconductor manufacturing to come to the US mainland. India also, Minister, trying very hard through the likes of Vedanta, Tatas and the others to get semiconductor manufacturing to come to India. The opinion in Davos seems very starkly split. Many say even if you build semiconductor foundries, these are going to be previous generation foundries and you're not going to be producing cutting edge chips. How confident are you that apart from everything that we do on the software side, on the hardware side, India could play a role at the cutting edge of technology?
People should see that India has close to 25% of the global semiconductor design talent. 50,000 plus semiconductor design engineers working in the country. No other country can claim this kind of semiconductor talent pool. Now, who designs the cutting edge technologies? It's these engineers. Once we set up the fab ecosystem in the country, our ability to leap from a legacy node of 45 nanometer or 28 nanometer all the way to 14 and 15 is very, very rapid, first. Second point, the world is changing. The demand for legacy nodes, which is 28 nanometer and above, is actually today close to 60% of the total demand. And why is that? That's because of the rapid use of semiconductors in electric vehicles, in telecom products, in power electronics, and practically every consumer electronic item that we see. So those who say that, okay, there is market only for 2 nanometer or 4 nanometer are not saying the correct thing. The market for higher nodes is today as big as the market for compute semiconductors.
Mr. Gopinathan, I'm curious to know from you your sense of the prospects of India throwing up a TCS or an Infosys or an HCL on the hardware side. The government's trying. Do you think the incentives that have been rolled out and the global tailwinds which kind of encourage manufacturing to come to countries like India because of a China plus one concern that most global companies have in their supply chains, do you think that's doing enough, or will this be more talk than action?
Rahul, if you will excuse me, your skepticism on our industry is actually rather quaint considering it's almost 20 years and we export about 250 billion in software. So, it's fine. It's the job of the media to be skeptical, but I have no doubt whatsoever on what Minister Vaishnaw just said. There is absolutely no reason why we should not be able to establish the same level of leadership in hardware that we have in software.
See, Rahul, this iPhone 14 is made in India, right? The entire supply chain is now shifting to the country. The hardware manufacturing, what you're saying, 10 years back, it was negligible in the country. Today, we have $87 billion worth electronics manufacturing in the country. And it is growing at a double-digit CAGR. Industry is very upbeat. The policies are very stable. The response that government is giving under Prime Minister Modi ji's leadership is very, very proactive to the industry. I think we are going to have a very great story. And this is not because the people want to simply diversify away their supply chains, but also because of the design capabilities that Indian engineers.
Okay, let's get a third-party perspective, and I like the passion that Rajesh brings. Most of what we've seen so far on the cutting edge has been on the software side. You're confident that Indian companies could do this on the hardware side as well. How do you see this? Do you see this leading to a greater tech fragmentation with two tech blocks emerging, China, Russia on the one side, countries like India, United States on the others? Is that inevitable in some senses?
There's definitely a certain decoupling, even if it's not complete, between the United States and China. I mean, I just think that's indisputable in the world today, and then that has ramifications for other places. The one ingredient that India also has in its favor that is extraordinary is not just talent and economics, but trust. And I think India's strength in building a software economy that people trust can translate into hardware in addition to all of the other factors. And one of the things that we find that we constantly focus on at Microsoft is trust is something that takes a long time to build. It's easy to lose. And so you just have to stay focused on it every day. But what impresses me, among many of the other things about the Indian technology economy, is not just the trust that has been built, but the government's commitment to sustaining it, the commitment of Indian technology leaders and businesses to sustaining it. I think that puts all of the ingredients together. Now, at the end of the day, you need a little bit of luck to really take off, but you build your own luck. And I think India has put in place all of the ingredients to do that.
When you compare the digital tech infrastructure built by India over the past several years with your experience in other markets across the world, where do you think India stands when it comes to the tech digital infrastructure?
Well, the thing that I would say is that in my own opinion, and this I'll qualify it by saying I haven't had the opportunity to go back to China since before the pandemic, but have pretty much been everywhere else in the world. I think India moved farther during the pandemic than any other country. And the India stack is the best example of that. It is the world's leading example by far of digital public goods produced at scale. Solving some of the biggest problems that every society worries about, payment systems and healthcare, of course, supported by these stacks around identity and presence. So this is propelling, I believe, India into a new technology era. Not just having people in India write the code, bring the intellectual thought leadership and energy into producing what the world needs, but now creating technology that itself will move around the world and serve the world well and serve India in return. So, for everybody who was part of it, you put some very difficult years to very good use.
What more would you like to see, Mr. Gopinathan? Because when we're in Europe, for example, a lot of what we take for granted back home, and not just those who are present at the World Economic Forum, but even the pakora walas, the rickshaw walas, the thela walas, what they can do very quickly isn't as obvious or simply done in many countries of Europe. Where else do you think the government should be using technology to further improve governance?
It's not about where else it is. The themes are very well understood. Healthcare is very important. Infrastructure is important. Education, taking it further down deep into the society, that's very important to make sure that the level of demand that we see, we get the supply to actually manage that. So it is not about what more. There's so much more to be done on the same themes, and we have infinite capacity if we can unlock it and if we can make sure that we systematically stay with it.
Minister, what's the buzz that you take back from Davos? Is India likely to be one of the beneficiaries of a global decoupling from China, or the prime beneficiary? Why I ask is because oftentimes in the past it's been said that this is India's moment, and yet the plane remains on the runway, doesn't quite take off. As Brad said, it could really be a hockey stick. Is it going to be a hockey stick or it will be a flat curve?
I think one thing which people have really understood is that the thoughtful strategy that Prime Minister Modi ji, his actions, his decisions, the choices he made on economy, on the pandemic, on technology, all these choices are very well understood. These are the choices which really bring a secular growth, 6 to 8%, moderate inflation over the next entire decade. So I think this is going to be a consistent growth period, and which is what people realize when I speak to many senior policymakers here. People understand the potential of India in a significantly better way, and people do realize that this is not a one-off. This is a real consistent growth period for the country.
Do you see this, Mr. Smith, as a situation where it's a winner-take-all market through what Microsoft has been able to achieve with ChatGPT, or do you see the likes of Google and even in China, through their use of artificial intelligence, be able to push back and make it a more even keel field? Oftentimes, when the platform gets set initially and there's rapid adoption, it's very difficult for others to play catch up.
I don't see this as a winner-take-all market. I do think that there's going to be formidable competition, and people are going to participate at many different layers. But even if you just take, what everybody's talking about at this Davos this year around so-called large language models or foundational models, I have no doubt that there are great talented people who were at DeepMind, acquired by Google. They will be a formidable and impressive participant. I have huge confidence in what I see every day at OpenAI and where we get to do at Microsoft. We know that at the Beijing Artificial Intelligence Institute, there is also this tremendous amount of talented people backed by an enormous amount of government support and funding. So you certainly have 3 participants right now at the forefront, we would say, of the largest models being created. And there will be others, and there will be startups. I mean, look, any day you take any area.
But the same technologies with authoritarian regimes, how much of concern is that to you? In a liberal regime, for example, with ChatGPT, there's so many times you put in a question, he says, I don't want to answer this. We've seen some of what China did during the pandemic in terms of Big Brother keeping very deep surveillance on its citizens.
I am constantly worried about how every area of technology gets weaponized. We live through this very directly, frankly, every day, defending Ukraine, defending not only against cybersecurity attacks, but what we call cyber influence operations. And we should constantly remain focused on ensuring this technology serves the human values we share, serves the interests of democracy, serves the opportunity for people to learn and think and express their views. So yes, absolutely.
Minister, before I wrap up, you were talking about using artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. Could you give us a sense of what's being done, what guardrails you have to prevent its misuse? Because I'm very concerned about you in government playing Big Brother over Rajesh, me and Indian citizens.
Couple of things. There is absolutely no concept of Big Brother, government being the Big Brother in the country. We have brought out a very transparent and a very balanced data protection bill, which gives absolutely the right principles, sets the right principles for protecting individual privacy. So there is no question of that. We are committed to maintaining people's privacy. There is no Big Brother attitude in the government, right? Second, in cybersecurity, it's a very evolving very evolving area. Daily we find new types of threats. So the AI tools that we have developed are helping us thwart millions of attacks on a daily basis from certain geographies which are very obvious. Millions of attacks are daily coming, and that are successfully being countered today using some very modern, very advanced tools that we have deployed so far. Most of these tools are developed in the country, are very successful, and this is going to be taken further ahead because we have a large infrastructure which is today almost totally digitalized. The entire railway network is fully digitalized. The power sector is fully digitalized. The shipping lines are all dependent upon digital infrastructure. So we are taking forward the cyber security efforts in a very big way.
So we've had a deep and insightful conversation on the use of modern technologies, artificial intelligence in the context of governance, the advantages and the potential pitfalls. And the good thing is India is at the cutting edge of what's happening globally. Unlike the previous industrial revolutions where India was forever trying to play catch up, being at the forefront of the advantages and the potential pitfalls is great as an Indian. And Rajesh, we share that pride about the Indian tech sector and the kind of champions that India has produced. And here's to more of that, hopefully in the hardware sector as well. Thank you so much, Rajesh Gopinathan, for joining us. Brad Smith, Minister Vaishnaw. It's a pleasure to have you at the India Pavilion for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Rahul.
you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.